Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus 3D printing video. Today I'm going to show you something I had been working on for a while off and on, and finally can consider it in a finished state. If you didn't see any of my videos, one of the first action figures I printed was my Shredder figure here. I believe this was the first one I actually ended up painting. This is a normal 5-inch Shredder figure, printed from a 3D scan of the original figure. Of course, it goes without saying, I painted him in a way so he would look more accurate to the character on the screen. If you remember in some of my older videos, I'll probably insert some pictures in this section, I had printed the already jointed Michelangelo figure, and then I made a big version at 200%. That was kind of the max that the Elegoo Neptune 3 could print. And yeah, I was happy with that. But of course, the joints being so loose, he has to be leaning against something at all times in order to work. But that kind of planted the seed that I thought it was cool you could make a big action figure and relive your childhood dreams of, oh, well, what if this little tiny 5-inch figure were big? So then, not too long after that, and this was way back in 2022, I printed a big version of Shredder. But the problem is he was, how do I want to say it? He was big, but the problem is for a long time, I didn't figure out how to do the capes. So it was not too long ago, you saw the video where I did Master Splinter's kimono, and it wasn't long before that I did Shredder's cape, which was just a single piece that was printed like this. The problem there being is that the big Shredder, who is 225% scale, I didn't know how to do his cape because it printed on more than one piece of paper. But thankfully, I think it was Adobe Reader had a function where it could print it on 4 pieces of paper, and then I was able to do that, which you'll see later on in this video / series of videos, as I'm not 100% sure at the time of this recording how many videos this will be split into. I'm thinking at least a part 1 and part 2, but in this video series, I am going to show you how I made the big Shredder figure. Now, a lot of the footage is going to go way back to when I was still working from home in a call center, and I was just sitting at my desk. So a lot of the stuff is going to be at my old desk, and a lot of it was, in fact, when I was actually working, I was doing the painting, because a lot of times I'd get no phone calls and I would just be sitting there doing nothing, and I was like, why don't I just paint? In fact, that spurred the whole 3D printing hobby, and I kind of still have a glut of stuff like this that I have to finish. Like, you'll see Santa there, Vinny over here, and Biff is kind of in the corner there, but more on those characters maybe in another video. But I'm going to go ahead and get to the footage that I had recorded almost 3 years ago at this point, and I'm going to do edits and add in text if there's anything I have to correct, because of course I've learned a lot in the last 3 years about 3D printing, and some stuff I may say or do may not be the best way to do it. And I will say it beforehand, the way that I put this figure together, I painted the pieces first before I put them together. Never do that, because if a joint breaks or if something breaks in a piece, guess what? You got to do that piece all over again. So honestly, I always put my figures fully together before I paint them, because then if there's a problem with the joint, you can just reprint the piece before you paint it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go to the big Shredder footage and see what I did over 3 years ago at this point. Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus 3D printing video. Today we're going to start on that 225% scale big Shredder figure I mentioned. These are all the pieces here. Like, here's the head, this is the legs, there's the body, here's the arms, and then there's the hands. So I'm just going to show you really quick what it's like to take the support material off a part. because it's one of those processes that's, if you're printing anything like halfway decent, you have to like figure it out. And it's not one of those things that's like straightforward. See, as I'd mentioned in my previous video, this is done at 5% infill for the support material. So this actually comes off rather easy. Because when I first did Bebop here, I actually believe I had 15 or 10% infill on my support material, and that ended up making it just like a heck of a lot harder to take the support material off, because basically, think of it this way, your support material was at the same density as your figure itself, and that's why, I know I showed it in my last video, but the bottom of Bebop's face is kind of messed up, but the good thing is the paint kind of covers it up well, so there's no need to worry about it. And yeah, some of this you can just kind of peel off. Some of it you have to use the flush cutters here, which these came with the Neptune 3, so it's not like it was an additional thing I had to buy. But yeah, Shredder's body is kind of weird here, that it's like really angled. See, if you see the back there. So all this had to support the top areas here. And let me just see if we can just get this all taken out. And then this is going to be the biggest like figure I've built, excluding that Michelangelo figure I mentioned in the last video. That was the print in place figure. But of course, the reason why that one was only 220% scale is because that's as big of a figure would fit on the Neptune 3's print bed. So I couldn't go any bigger even if I wanted to, because what would happen is in the actual slicer program, which is Elegoo Cura, I don't know if it's like modified in any way just for the Neptune, but it just calls itself Elegoo Cura. It will only let you print something that's as big as the print bed itself. So you can't like just slice models that don't fit, if you understand what I'm saying. So you couldn't like make a 500% scale Michelangelo and then well, actually you could, but it would only print up to the top of the print bed, and then you'd literally have like probably the bottom of his feet. Wow, this stuff is actually really a lot, because the body is pretty big. And the thing that when you're doing this, you want to hope that when you're actually taking the support material out, you're not actually, and then I dropped my flush cutter here, but you're not actually removing parts of the model. And you're only taking off the support material. But yeah, that's enough of me talking. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly take this all off, and you're just going to see it like speed up really quickly until I'm done with all the parts. Okay, and as I just said, as you can see here, I'm just really removing all this support material. And basically what you're seeing is about 30 minutes or so minutes of me removing support material condensed into just a few minutes. But basically what you have here is, as I'd mentioned before, the support material will support anything that is not doesn't have anything underneath it to support it when it's on the print bed. So like your legs, if you can see them there, they have the supports under the knees. The head has the support under the neck piece and all that kind of stuff there. So it can be a long and tedious process, but it's one of those ones that you really have to do. And on the actual printer, I actually had fixed some settings like retraction settings and stuff that had improved this greatly. And the funny part is, before I had actually printed the big shredder figure, the retraction settings I had messed up, and I have a version of his head where it was retracting too much, and it literally looks like the head is made out of mesh because it retracted too much and didn't print enough. So that was kind of my lesson, that you don't want your retraction settings up too high, or you're not going to get a solid piece printed. But yeah, every time I print something I have to do this, and as I said, my stringing and a lot of this stuff has gotten a lot better. And what I would typically do, I don't know if I did it with this figure because it's like, as I said, 3 years ago now, you're going to want to sand any areas that have like these support material stuff still stuck on them. So it just kind of helps and cleans up the figure. And as you can see, I'm finally taking the legs here. I might have even like streamlined this better because a lot of my stuff I don't have to go so crazy with the support material. But of course, if you are printing an action figure, you will have to sit down and do exactly what I'm doing here. Sometimes it's quick if it's a small figure, and of course a bigger figure like this, there's going to be more support material. And I have a humongous bag of support material, so if I ever find a way to reuse it, I got it, and I can dry it and maybe turn it into more filament, or just turn it into something that's a lot more useful in the future for all we know. But yeah, that's the general gist of taking support material off. It's nothing too exciting, but it's, as I said, very tedious and does take a long time. And I didn't end up using that belt piece, if you're wondering. I made a belt just like with Little Shredder. Oh, okay, basically what you saw there was just about 30 minutes of support material removal. You'll see I got it clean for the most part, but there still is a little bit on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the rest of these little pieces off camera, because it's just easier to get in there and be a little careful with a lot of this stuff. The only thing I will make note is, if you're going to do figures like this, around the joints, like these pieces here, and of course any pieces like the little spike Shredder has on his shoulders, on his hands, and on his knees, always be careful on those, because you got to remember, this flush cutter will cut that just as easily as it will the support material. So I'm going to go ahead and the rest of the part clean up these parts and get them nice and clean, and then I'll show you what they all look like in the next part of this video. So that'll literally be a second for you, and probably another 20 or 30 minutes of removing support material for me, but it's a lot easier just to do it off camera. So I'll be back in just a minute for you. Okay, now as you can see, I've spent several hours taking this stuff off and sanding a little bit, and I've gotten it nice, pretty clean. And of course, when you're making a figure like this, you have to say to yourself, you know what, I don't have to make this perfect, because paint will hide a lot. But I will like take off any little piece of something I can while I'm like painting it. If I see something I can just easily pull off with the flush cutter. But at this point, I'm going to be looking at what colors do I need to make Shredder. Of course, he has black tights, so black is essential. Coral because skin color. And then gray and white because we need to mix some gray, we need to mix some white. And on this one, I'm going to specifically make his spikes on his arms. I don't know if you can see this too well, but I have a little video of Ninja Turtles here. But if you see the spikes on his arms, they're not really gray, they're kind of white. So I want to do that, and I want to add a little bit of extra detail as compared to the small figure that I made here, where I really didn't give him a lot of detail. Like, for instance, he has straps for his leg things that I didn't give him, and then he has straps for his arm things, which I just ended up making them black. But I'm going to try to make it more of a flesh color with like a gray stripe, more like he's looking in the TV show. So basically, it's going to be a similar setup to what I have here, but I'm going to add a couple of extra details that I didn't add in this little figure. So we're going to go ahead and start painting and get like a basic coat of paint on and go from there. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do the good old-fashioned, like, speed it up, so you're not going to just watch me paint for, like, hours and hours, because I'm sure the problem with me is when it comes to painting these things, I'm not going to be done painting this today, even if, like, I started earlier, because this is the next day since I made the other video. It literally, like, 2 or 3 hours of sanding and ripping off support material, and now we're going to start painting. So I might not get these parts painted until tomorrow. Then I think what I'll do is I'll assemble the figure once all the paint, everything's nice and painted, and then I will put the clear coat over everything. So I'll show that process, but you're going to just basically see a montage of me painting really fast. But let's go ahead and do that right now.